Then we will go into the question and answer period and try to write down on the questions. Then with this, we're going to have the introduction of the speakers today. We have Dr. Stefan von Beek, who is the responsible for in Europe. He has graduated from the University of Gießen in Germany. Stefan von Beek, he has been working as a teacher in the University of Gießen. We are with us with MSB in 2011, and we have a PhD in 2018 with this topic, which is swine health. Stefan is presently the MD, Technical Director in all the European region. For today also, we have Gaoji, who is the Technical Regional Sales Manager in China. Gao Ji is a swine business in Unity Manchurian at the University of Nanjing in China. Gao Ji, I had the opportunity of working from 2012 to 2015 in China, and since 2015, he is with MSD, he is the General Director in China. He has a lot of experience, the same way as Stefan von Beek, on the control of ASF in their country. So then I would like to give you, Stefan, to take the lead on your presentation. Thank you for being here with us today.
Stefan, please take the lead on your presentation. It's your time. Thank you, Stefan, to be here with us at this time. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Paulo. Thank you for the introduction and also for the invitation and the possibility to present the status of African swine fever and the German swine industry under the impact of ASF. And when I was asked to give this presentation, and the title that you see here was proposed to me, A Powerhouse of Pork Production Under Threat, I felt like that's a bit overly dramatic. But when preparing the presentation and looking into the data and coming to the conclusion, you will see that at the end, I have to say it's not far away from the truth, or it may be the truth. So let's look into it. As you very well know, Germany is located in the center of Europe, and our swine industry is very much interconnected with all surrounding countries. So we import a lot of piglets, for example, from Denmark and the Netherlands. And also we import fatteners for slaughter from other countries into Germany, and then we export meat into the European Union and the world, but we will come to that later, or we will look at that later. If you look at the swine industry and where it is located in the country, you can see a distinct concentration in the northwest, some a little less concentrated in the south, and there is also swine operations in eastern Germany, but less number of farms, but bigger farms. This is due to the, let's say, old socialistic swine system or agricultural system, that there's rather a bigger farm system and less farms, where in the West we have in average smaller farms, but a lot of farms. So this is a quite distinct division in the country. Now, if we look at the history and at the past years, and please excuse some of these graphs are labeled in German, I will explain what they are about. The first one on the left-hand side shows you the number of sows over time. And if you see that In 2004 to 2007, roughly, we had about 2.5 million productive sows in the country. And then from 2007 on, we saw a decline that led to a number of 1.8 million in 2018. And that for sure continued this decline. And the interesting point that I just want to make, in 2007, what happened is that two discount retailers jumped into the fresh meat market, and they used their market power to put pressure on the price, and this put pressure on the swine production and led to sow farms closing. In a parallel movement, and you can see that on the right-hand graph, you can see on the upper side the average number of sows per sow farm. So in 2000, average number of sows was 53, while in 2018 it was 229 sows per sow farm. And on the graph below, you see the number of sow farms within 1,000 agricultural operations. So quite a similar trend, less farms, but the farms are getting bigger. This at least was true until 2018. This depicts the number of animals slaughtered for 2020, and it just shows that pigs are the second most slaughtered species in Germany after chickens. And we actually slaughter more animals than we produce with our sows domestically. And this is because we import fatteners and also piglets from other countries to finish them in Germany or slaughter them in Germany. Now, what does the pig meat market look like, or what did it look like for Germany? And what we can conclude is that the industry moved to an export business in the 2000s, roughly. So if you look at the graph in the middle, and it gives imported and exported meat in 1,000 tons, and you can see the darker red bars is the meat import into Germany, and the lighter red bars is the meat export. And you can see that until 2004, we imported more pork than we sold, and that switched within the course of 5 years, and we started to export massively compared to what we imported. The exports were going into the European Union, mainly into Italy, but most importantly into China, Korea, South Korea, and Japan, as you can see here. And this is getting important soon. Please excuse me. Now, looking at the African swine fever in Europe, we had the situation we are facing now started in 2007 in Georgia, a former Soviet Union republic, and it spread through Russia into other countries, including the European Union. 1 second. Please excuse me. So, and this spread, I would like to show you in a short video where you can see the cases, and you will see dots appearing in countries. Every red dot is a farm that got positive with ASF. Every blue dot is a white boar. And you can see starting in southern Russia, you can see it spreading through the country, either in a generic spread through the wild boar population, or you can see jumps, and these jumps are caused by mostly human or animal transport vectors. So in 2013, we have a mixed case situation in Russia, And in 2014, the disease entered the European Union. And what you can see now in the middle of the screen in the Baltics is we see a tremendous number of wild boar cases. And this shows the surveillance system that is in place in the European Union, because we check and test more animals apparently than in Russia. Moving into Poland, and soon you will see the jump to the western part of Poland, which then in 2020 migrated into Germany. This is what happened. And we have here the situation as it was middle of September when I put together the slides. And we can see on the border to Poland a lot of wild boar cases, and you can see the 3 little red dots here. Let me show you here and here, which are the commercial cases. 3 farms. 2 of these were backyard pig keepers with 2 pigs each, so not really a farm. And 1 was an organic free-range farm housing 100 fatteners. And the interesting thing is that this farm fought authority that demanded it to keep the pigs in the stable. And they went to court to prevent this, and they succeeded. And they were so successful that they got positive with ASF. But in general, we have a wild boar population outbreak in Eastern Germany. Some quick words of what happens in case of a positive case. There are 2 zones. And the first zone, the so-called core, in this zone, that is a 3-kilometer radius about around the site of infection, let's say. There's no movement of animals allowed. The region will be fenced in. Hunting is prohibited. Every pig cadaver has to be found and has to be reported, has to be tested, and more measurements. And around this, there's a buffer zone where a surveillance program is running. Movement and hunting is restricted. And in this zone, extra measures to separate pigs, domestic pigs and wild boars, should be separated. And looking at the infection dynamics, and our experience is that even these zones and these control measures are implemented, we were not able to stop the disease moving yet. And what we know is that with the normal movement with wild boars, the disease will move about 25 kilometers per year. And this movement is directed and predictable in a way. And there's a lot of hope that large bodies of water like rivers or highways could restrict the movement and would be barriers for that movement. And we will look in the next slide if this is really true. Then, of course, we have the movement with vectors. So infected pigs or humans. And this movement, these jumps that we talked about, is undirected and unpredictable. And of course, fast. Now, if we look at the boar movement, and this is an interesting study where a wild boar population in a certain area was analyzed for a genetic connection. And this area contained 2 big rivers, the Rhine and the Mosel, and several bigger highways. And I'm not going through all the details, but what we could see, one second. Please excuse me. So what we could see from this study is that only the River Rhine, which is really a big one, was a barrier for wild boar movement. Smaller rivers that even were big did not block the movement, and also the highways did not block the movement. And for the River Rhine, it's not the size, but the current. The river is quite fast, and this seems to restrict the wild boar movement. So to rely on these environment traits seems to be a dangerous play in control of ASF. Now, we have ASF in the country. What does that mean? And I'm sure you've heard it. Once we had the first positive case, and you see the headline in the bottom, one pig turns the pig world upside down. All the pork export from Germany was stopped. China did not buy anymore. Japan did not buy. Korea did not buy. Nobody. Bringing a halt to that export-oriented industry. And you can see that, as I told before, about 3/4 of all the exported meat went into the Asian markets. And that put Germany still in 2019 at the top place of the European pig producers. And now the industry lost these 3/4 of export potential. And this, of course, had an impact on the price. You can see here the pig meat price, and the red line is €1.75 per kilogram meat, slaughter weight. And this red line means this is the break-even price that the fattening farm needs to get to make a profit. And you can see in 2020, in the majority of the year, this price was way below that break-even point. And it is even more dramatic if we look at the piglet price. So what a sow farm can sell a 25 kilogram piglet for. Here we have the break-even at around €55. And you can see that this gray dotted line, which is the 5-year average of the years 2016 to 2020, is nicely going around that value, mostly above, sometimes under, but it's still okay. Now, if we look at 2020, we came from a high price period. Then the first drop was the first COVID-related lockdown. Then it was kind of stable. Then this drop was the ASF introduction in 2020. And the third drop was the second COVID lockdown, because there was less domestic meat demand also. And you can see in 2021, the red line, the price did not really recover. And this, of course, puts the farms under a lot of pressure. Now, how does the industry, how does Germany try to deal with it? How do we cope? And one thing is to try to export from the non-ASF affected regions, which is the West, where we have the big majority of the pig production. And this leads into a division of the country. Black infected zone in the east and a non-infected zone in the west. And this closely resembles the former division of the country. And this is psychologically important. I've been talking with veterinarians that are working in the eastern area, and they are really desperate. The farmers are desperate. They get little to no support. And the sow population in that area is in danger, because what happens? The slaughterhouses do not buy pigs from that region anymore because they cannot really market it. The fatteners cannot be sold. So the fattening farms do not buy piglets. That puts pressure on the piglet producers. They have to sell at the lowest prices into whatever market is available. the operations are not profitable anymore, so sow farms are closed and investments are lost. And you have seen about 25% of the sow population are in the east, and these 25% are in danger for now, eventually even more in the country. So what is the outlook? What are eventually learnings? So first of all, ASF is absolutely hard to control and to contain. With natural movement, it will hit the western part of the country in about 10 years. And what we may do is a science-based wild boar containment, definitely, a good cadaver detection and removal, and efficacious vaccines. But we have really to manage expectations here. Developing a vaccine is not easy. My prediction is, and also from other people, that the German pig industry will not recover to what it was before COVID and African swine fever. The learnings is that surveillance needs to be on spot. We have to have incentives for reporting dead wild boars and not punishments. And at the moment, the situation is that a punishment might happen for the one who owns the land. We should not endorse outdoor housing, definitely. The production farms need biosecurity at the highest level possible. And we should, of course, negotiate new trade agreements and rely more on the domestic demand. And yeah, maybe we could use COVID rules as a blueprint to give farms the possibility to test themselves free for potentially export. So a quick lookout into what happened. The questions will come later. And now I'm very curious and interested in what Gaudi can tell us and me about the situation in China. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Stephen, for your excellent presentation. Now I will show all the audience about what happened in China in the past 3 years and what the governments and what the Chinese practitioners did under the threat of African swine fever. As you know, that China is very important in pig industry all around the world. Before African swine fever happened 3 years ago, Chinese pig industry provided half of the world's pig. Chinese people consumed half of the world's pig also. And traditionally, Chinese people like to eat pork. Every year, they consume much more quantity than the chicken and the beef. So pork is very important in Chinese people's everyday life. But in the 1st of August in 2018, we detected the first case of African swine fever. It is in the north part of China. Many people think it may come from Russia. But this situation become worse very quickly because this virus spread to the whole China, to the 31 provinces in China within 10 months. It's very quick. It destroyed the swine production very heavily. And you can see that after the outbreak of African swine fever, the price of different pigs, the price of the carcass, the price of the pork raised up very quickly, especially in 2019 and 2020. And because of the price raise of the pork, the CPI means the consumers price index come up very quickly. You can see the pictures on the right side. You can see that there are two peaks of the CPI in the past 10 years. The first is in the 2011, the second is in the 2019. All the two peaks are caused by the pork price. 10 years ago, it's caused by the PRRS and the Seal rabies. But from 2019, it's caused by the African swine fever. So for the government, the most urgent issue is to ensure the pork supply for the Chinese people, because after the outbreak of African swine fever, many commercial pigs and the breeding stocks died. So the supply gap is very huge. Chinese people do not have enough pork supply. So the government is very worried about that. So after the outbreak of African swine fever, our government do a lot of things to encourage the production of swine. Yes. The first of all, they give the companies some subsidies and the lending. They encourage the companies to build more pig farms, to build more pig facilities. Let them to bring in more breeding stocks. Encourage them to upgrade their facilities and technology, especially in the biosecurity and artificial intelligence. They also relax the restrictions of environmental protection. Yes, the governments reduce the environmental assessment procedures. They reduce the restricted area for the livestock. They also provide more land for the pig farming. And they also encourage the companies to build some multi-story building to save the land, and also collect the land for construction purpose in rural areas. And the government also control the transport of the pigs. Yes, they also built a real name system, that is the national uniform code for the pig transport trucks, so they can supervise the trucks. They also encourage the institutions and the companies to develop the ASF vaccine and the antibody or antigen test kits. But the prevention and control strategy of the governments evaluate under the situation of African swine fever. First of all, the destination of the government is to control the African swine fever in every infected point. So they close the infected area and eradicate the infected animals. But after several months, they find that it is very, very difficult to control that, because the pig price come up very quickly, and the subsidies of the government cannot satisfy the needs of the practitioners. The practitioners still sell the infected pigs to the slaughterhouse. So the government make some change in the control strategy. They try to the regional prevention and control, and also support the accurate eradication for the companies. Then the third stage is that the government continuously strengthens the regional prevention and control, and gradually change live pig transport to pork transport. Before African swine fever, yes, the main pig, swine production area is in the north and the middle of China, but the consumption area is mainly in the east of China. That means, and the Chinese people also like to eat hot carcass. That means there are millions of pigs transport in the way every day in China. It is very difficult to control this kind of situation. So after the African swine fever outbreak, the government divided the country into 5 regions. So all the live pigs transportation can only be restricted in the within their own regions. We cannot transport pigs across the regions. It helps the local government to control the African swine fever spread. And the government also increased the pork import. You can see that in the past 2 years, the pork import increased a lot. And in the last year, Chinese government only import pork from 20 countries. In these 20 countries, 4 are from Latin America. They are Brazil, Chile, Mexico, and Argentina. And for the companies, they also do something to help themselves, to save themselves. They upgrade their biosecurity. They developed a method to deal with African swine fever that is accurate eradication. They find many ways to replenish the gills. And the group companies also increase the production capacity. They built more pig farms, more new pig facilities. Before African swine fever, you can not see any modern disinfected and wash facilities like the pictures in China. Only the PIC or Coppel or some international companies have this kind of thing. But after African swine fever outbreak, most of the Chinese companies built such a modern and professional disinfectant and wash area. And they also strengthen the control of the people, of the pigs, and strengthen the internal biosecurity. And from the second half of 2019, most of the companies mastered a new method, that is the test and the remove technology. That means if you found that African swine fever have already come into your farms, you will not kill all the pigs. You just test and remove some infected ones. That helps the companies resume production in several weeks. After most of the companies master this kind of technology, in many cases, over 90% of the pigs in the positive farms have been saved. I think this kind of technology helped the Chinese companies a lot. And because of the issue of mutant strain come out last year, some new sampling methods will also be developed. You can see that in many Chinese pig farms, even some 300 or 500 source farms, they also build some simple testing lab, like the pictures, to the diagnosis of African swine fever. And the companies always find more gills for their production. In the past, before African swine fever, we used AOI gills. But after African swine fever, many live goats are died. People can only find the female fattenings to breed like goats. It is a very quick way, but the performance is not very good. So the hormone product usage is also increased to help this kind of females to get better performance. And the Chinese companies also increase the import of breeding pigs. In the past 3 years, most breeding pigs that come from France and Denmark. And the companies also invest a lot in the new farms and new facilities. You can see that during 2019 and 2020, a lot of new projects have been built. But now, after the situation of African swine fever developed, Chinese people and the Chinese government also find some way to deal with that. So the total sow population of China has almost recovered in the first quarter of this year, but the African swine fever is still outbreak everywhere. So we still need some time to reach the number of the total stock herd before African swine fever outbreak. And this year, because of the COVID-19 and some other situations, the feed cost and some other costs also raise. The pig price fall because the frozen meat put on the market and some other kind of situation happened. So all the companies go to deficit. You can see that in the pictures in the right, on the left. And because of the low pig price, most of the practitioners start to call the sows from this year. So the situation in China now is the practitioners must fight against both African swine fever and the fluctuant price. So African swine fever can also happen in the future in China. And we actually, the whole company don't know when the African swine fever will go out. So all the people are still waiting for the development of the vaccines. Yeah, and because of the low price, the big companies will stop their new products building. So I think in the future, the price will stop drop, yeah, and the government can go out of the deficit, but actually they also cannot get a very high pig price, high profit. That is what happened in China in the past 3 years and now. And thank you for your attention. Yes. Okay, Paulo. Okay, Paulo, we can.
Yes, can you hear me?
It's your turn now. Yeah.
Thank you very much, Gaudi. Excellent presentation. Very, very well done.
Now we will be hearing from Dr. Avi Lopez, who has worked as an animal health manager in Guatemala. Ever since 2015, she has been the head veterinarian responsible for sanitation of Toledo farms. Abby Lopez has a degree from the San Carlos University of Guatemala, and she has a post-PhD in veterinary epidemiology. This is extremely important given the subject we're dealing with today. Thank you, Dr. Lopez. And she also has a PhD in biometry and another PhD in pig production. Dr. Abby Lopez, you have the floor.
A project that we have been working in 2019 in our farms. What is it that is happening? We started to ask many questions to see if the strategy that we were using in security and if it was correct, if we have the approach that was correct, and if all the people working had the same knowledge. We were starting to detect, because at a certain time, for many people in the farms, it became cumbersome because the discourse was always the same. You had to have training, another type of more training and training and more training. But we were always implementing new things, strategies, protocols, equipment, but we realized that we needed to work a lot with people. So why? Because in this chart, you cannot really see what it is, and that's not the objective. Maybe we can see the colors. These are the weekdays and the objectives that we have of the visit, and each one of them belongs to a person. And the other columns are companies. These are the visits that we have in 1 week, and to have this. And these are companies that for outsourcing services, and then we separate it by individuals. They're too much going in the different farms. And controls have to be specific for each one of these populations. With farm people is the people we work mostly with, more training for them, covering the daily protocols, and with them we had to continue, but not only being that target group, but also some other people that didn't have any knowledge on safety, and they were coming in and they put the farms at risk. So we put this project, which tries to have biosecurity as a culture, and have people aware, because protocols are there, resources are there, and everything there. But we need that people be aware that they have to do it willingly, always hand in hand with us. The idea was to create and consolidate a biosecurity culture within the workers at the company to guarantee the health of animals within pig farms to reach the objectives that we need in our business unit. It's important. It's a multidisciplinary approach. We are not going to biosecurity or with quality of biosecurity. We had also a management change. This was something cultural that we needed to embed into our workers, and some others that went into the farmers. Human resources also were on board as well, and also the unconditional support of management. With this group, we started working on this project. What was the project about? To get a breakdown of the population according to the knowledge that they had and the activities. So we divided in 3 groups, A, B, and C. Group A was the permanent people at a farm that go to work daily there. that get training on biosecurity, and we give them all the protocols. People that we have worked mostly with. Then we have Group B, which is the support areas and also the outsourcing, human resources, physicians, project heads, environment people, management in different areas, in productivity, and we're in this group. And then they, like I said, outsourcings, like feed, that are sister companies, but they have a different approach when transporting feed for them. At a given time, we said that they were evaluated time-wise. They came, bring the feed, they have to clean and wash their units, but we worked a lot with them because they're, something that it's absolutely necessary because of the feed. Also, like I said, outsources, security people, the security guards that are daily at the farms, and then the Group C. There are very occasional visits, people who come occasionally, people who are not in the farm constantly, and therefore we cannot sit down to work with them on biosecurity because they don't have the time. Their strategy with them was completely different. Then with Group A, what did we do? We chose ambassadors on biosecurity. We started working with the group and see who our allies were. We chose biosecurity people, of course, and people who are very committed with biosecurity that can come from different areas, but we were identifying the way of being that were very committed and have them as allies. We have a biosecurity school that was outside the farm. This was before the pandemic. We had time to get together, eat something together, and discuss about biosecurity. And what we were doing with these biosecurity ambassadors to train them to be trainers, train the trainers. And then we have a Go Live project. We have an activity of working with the project, and these ambassadors that we have already trained would go and train all the staff and personnel of the farm, trying to have 100% coverage of someone in maternity. There was a delivery, cannot be left by itself. So we train people with the people that were available because some of them were in parturition areas. So that's why they had to do it. The idea is to reach 100% of the staff trained. And then we had a biosecurity commission or committee. So I told you who this ambassador was, people with good practices in bio practices and leaders that were being detected because of their own features. So basically, what were you saying? To be trained, to promote the culture of biosecurity promoted by them, and to look for solutions at a given time. When we were preparing the protocols that we're going to see further down in the slides, and we see that many of people are solution providers, and we didn't have to write the protocols and be as a law. But what do we do with the biosecurity school? With all the veterinarians, we're in charge of training them with the different topics that I'm going to show to you. But all of a sudden, we can find an expert on pest control for the problem, and we give them reference materials and support materials to the ambassadors. We were discussing the protocol for biosecurity. They are really prone to give solutions. When we discover the protocol, they even realized that there were some faults, failures, and risks that we can find day to day and that we cannot detect. Actually, it was a very nice exchange of ideas. We discussed with them and how they prepared their own protocol together with us. We always exchange good ideas. There are people who have fantastic ideas. So the idea is just to exchange among different farms. I say, you did this, you did that. So they put them together. And with the biosecurity school, okay, because we have several modules when we finish, they graduated from school with a diploma that was given to them. Then when we have the go live in each farms, we broke down the team into different parts, and we went along with the trainers and presented the project. This was a go live project, that we had a real outing. Always with people from human resources and change management and biosecurity. We have the agenda that we had for the different activities and the agenda, the timetable for. Then we had the graduation, like I said, and then we formed what we call a Biosecurity Committee, which was so that at the end of the training, we could have someone who will always be evaluating, seeing what the risks are, and see what risk would we face in their non-conformities or bridges in some of the protocols. Find a way to find the solutions. Always try to find solutions, always with our support, and to have basically a logbook where we had. Then Group B, like I said, these are people who are support for all the farms, and we classified it in two parts. Group B1, when we have quality systems, human resources management, officers, veterinarians, project engineers, doctors in Group B1, and services from outsourcing B2 in feed, security, and maintenance. Why did we divide it? Because each subgroup has its own strategy. For B1, we had an initial evaluation to see where the knowledge was, to see an engineer or a physician, because sometimes they didn't have that knowledge. It was a lot of fun, actually. We found that people had some concepts that they didn't understand, and we took it for granted that everyone understood it. It was fun, but at the same time, we were concerned because we realized that actually we didn't have the same level of knowledge. And this is very dangerous because at the end of the day, they go in and out of the farms. We have a biosecurity workshops. Here we don't talk about pest control or sanitation because it is not of interest for this group. Here we speak about the awareness and the impact. We take pictures of high mortalities that all of a sudden they have on the internet, and we have problems that we have had. We give them very basic concepts, what's a thomit, so they can understand, and the protocol for coming into the farm, because the protocol has to be covered for any person entering there. And the movements, we say what are the different status of the different farms. We cannot run into a contaminated farm going into a healthy farm. And we created a biosecurity passport that any person in the group B1 have to have this passport. And in this passport, we record the visit to any of the farms and the name. So whenever I want to go to another farm, they can see that they are meeting the days that have to be met between visits to different farms. Then also we have the biosecurity visa, because with time we started to see to carry out these workshops, which are annually performed, and we are reinforcing them because actually rotation is very low. But what we are doing is these workshops to update people, to repeat the entrance, and to find the different days that have to be between one visit to a farm to a visit to another farm, because farms change. Actually, when you have the update for this things, they we issue the visa. If I didn't have time or I didn't participate, the visa is not issued and people cannot go in. So it's a compulsory requirement. We do it now live. We do it on site now. This is the one we do now, and we see how the areas are. I had a question if we have had some training on biosecurity, and we saw that someone was there, and it is our duty to train people with any person who comes in as a new person. And we have to train. Even the system is ongoing, that there are always some pitfalls that we can find. So this is the passport, like I told you, and the visa. And this is good for 1 year. And the visa has to be issued every year. With group B2, with outsourcing, we approached them. We got together with them because we never talked to them about biosecurity. They had some training. We presented the project, and we made them understand how important they were for the feed inflow or security when they're doing the security rounds around them, and we get them what we want. You want to meet this, and that. The surprise that we find on this site, yes, but we also want you to this uniform that we don't take too long to do the car wash or the vehicle wash. And we need such long time for a bus or a trailer or a truck. So it was very good because it was a two-way discussion, which should be. Same thing for the security agents. This is important because they have a great rotations, and we have to update information when there is a new agent. So here in Guatemala, we have a backyard pigs. They have it at home, and they feed them with waste. So we have to make them understand what the rules are, because probably they didn't even know about it. Like I said, with outsourcing, we also had some training sessions, and with Group C, that we have no idea who they're going to be. We started an awareness campaigning in the corporate emails. We send some notes to let them know that the information capsules on biosecurity, and this is something that has been very good at times because company has some different companies. There are visits, and we have worked presently in this way to news notes or capsules with people that they do not go into the farm and have not.
So it was really essential to do this. It was extremely useful. We already had the project in place. So what we did was to write up the bulletins and to start making this system work. We have a super summarized bulletin. It's quite summarized, the information, and it basically refers to the entry protocol and to avoid bringing in personal objects into the farm, so that whenever a visitor comes in, they can have to notify the farm. They cannot just knock at the door and go in. So that way we map all the movements going on, and this is a very practical bulletin for that purpose. And as I said, these are the ones that we use to mail to the corporations, very, very succinct, very, very clear, so that the companies, the breeders would know, and that whenever they had a visitor, they would not be caught off guard, and that they would have all the protocols in place. We started sending these bulletins to corporate bulletins on ASF, and we realized that many people in the Dominican Republic go visit Guatemala, and many companies that have a direct link to the farms. So we're in touch with people that sometimes we don't even know, but nonetheless we're in touch with them. We have been able to convey the message. We have also made presentations at the top management level to raise awareness, and they are very brief, very simple, in fact, just letting them know what is going on, letting them know that we need their support, and that these are the measures to be undertaken. We're also doing this in a very orderly manner, in a very clear manner. It is very important also to have sanctions, and it's not nice to implement sanctions because some people have been fired because of non-compliance. But if you do not set a precedent, if you don't really put all your cards on the table and do things transparently and clearly, it doesn't work. So unfortunately, that is the way people function. They need to see that there are sanctions when they violate biosafety measures, and so we have a very simple template where we categorize the levels of non-compliance and the sanction that is applicable to each of these non-compliances. We have very good people that were very valuable to the company that have had to let go, but because we cannot justify under any circumstances any non-compliance or any violation. Now, what comes next? This is a project we started working on in 2019, but we're currently in the maintenance and reinforcement stage. We're sort of reinforcing those stages and areas that need reinforcement, and we need maintenance. A project doesn't work if it's not maintained through time. The work at first was very intensive. It required quite a lot of time, many meetings, but it did not end there. It is ongoing. So currently we carry out assessments. We compare the farms with those that we have established on the items that we have established in a checklist. And companies and breeders want to stay abreast of all these. They're in constant communication. They let us know of anything that happens. We also have established early warning systems, especially regarding the ASF, and we ask them to notify any disturbances. This school of biosafety is something that we need to reinforce. We need to reinforce biosafety. We need to stress the points that are most pressing. Some are not necessary to reinforce because people understand them clearly. So we concentrate on those which are necessary. And we also have a new program of education for newcomers to the company. And everything is geared to biosafety. Always maintain this oversight present. And since we know that there are always people who do not comply, we need to be very vigilant of identifying these people. And we are trying to automate many of these processes because that will really make it easier for us to continue with our processes. Okay, I think that is all. And if you have any questions, I'm at your service. Excellent. Thank you, Dr. Abby Lopez. I really love this work on training and prevention that you have done. Thank you so much for sharing it with us. Now I'm going to switch into English so that I can talk to the other speakers. So please use the interpretation service.
Thank you very much, Stefan, for your presentation. Very well done. Thank you very much, Gaudi, for your presentation too. Very well done. So the presentation of your tree is fantastic. Very good one. So I have a question here for warm up. I think this question is, I would address to Dr. Abi Lopez. It's from Ruben Echevest. Ruben, I hope I'm pronouncing your name properly. So Ruben questions, I will translate it. I will do the best to be more close to what he's asked. But he's saying that the fever porcine classical, I would say classical swine fever, it's similar to the African swine fever, he believes. Can we combine the two ways to see and the prevention of both in the program, or you see different, Dr. Ab Lopez?
Well, I think that they really are quite similar. We have African swine flu and classical swine flu are quite similar, even though Guatemala has not been recognized by the OIE as free from these diseases for some years. It is the same risk of presence of PPA and or ASF and CSF. So many measures can be used similarly, and I think as regards technology, which I think what your question means, yes, the answer is yes, we need to migrate to the use of technology because sometimes we have many human failures. So we are developing new technologies, new projects. For example, this visitor control, which I explained to you is one of the main starting points for the project. And now this is something that we need to automate and take advantage of the technology to improve on it and make it more efficient. I don't know if I answered your question.
You did very well done. Thank you. Stefan and Gaudi, by chance, could you hear the translation, the answer of Dr. Ab Lopez? Do you know? So my question for you, Stefan, and maybe Gaudi, is based on your experience, the control of classical swine fever could be adopted for the African swine fever, or they are very different? Would you use different approach?
So the approach, let's say the general approach that is applied in Germany to the control of classical and African swine fever is in fact the same. What I described, these different zone system with different level of surveillance and in the core culling of all animals and culling of all contact animals to break the chain of infection. For African swine fever, it is definitely harder to contain it. The high tenacity, the tenacity in a dead carcass of a wild boar lying everywhere, and you really need just a small droplet of infectious material to infect another animal. So yes, in principle the same, but harder, much harder to do in African swine fever.
Yeah, I think that the message I get from you is don't, if you know how to handle or be free from classical swine fever, don't underestimate African swine fever because it can be more challenged. Yeah. I think this is the message.
Yeah.
So very good.
Okay.
So the Gaudi, would you like to make any additional comment?
Okay, according to my experience, because in China we are very different from the European countries, because For both African swine fever and the classic swine fever, we did not eradicate either of them. So for classic swine fever, we can use vaccine to control that. But for African swine fever, we have no effective vaccine for that. Yes, but African swine fever in the pig farm spread much slowly than classic swine fever. So if it's coming to your farms in China and in some other Southeast Asian countries, yes, we can also try to eliminate some infected pigs just in your farms and save the other pigs. Yes, that's what we did in China and other Asian countries now. Yeah.
No, very good. I think for me, two messages from your comment is that the classical swine fever moves faster and that there is vaccine when African swine fever goes slow. And your answer goes to the next question we have here. So in China, you had the experience of the very first case of African swine fever. The same thing for Germany. Now we had a case near to us or at home for those from Dominican Republic here with us in Latam, in our region, the first case. I imagine it's such a big stake, and that the first time you see the disease, there is confusion, there is concern, there is doubt. Then the time to do collections sent to a lab that you can get a result and have the result back, and then and imagine a lab when they do the first test, if it comes up positive, they would like to do double check because it's a big stake. But going to the point, for a disease that moves slow, and this is a problem, from the moment you find the first case to the moment you have the diagnosed, how was the experience? I would start with you, Gaoji. How was the experience in China, and what would you recommend for us in the region? What we could learn from the experience from China in that regard? And then I will shift it to Stefan and see how he sees that shares his experience and the recommendations in that regard.
So you mean that if you have a very near case in your farm, near your farm, and you have already found the first case, and how to control this situation? You mean that, right?
Yeah. How is the process? How quickly that moves, to who to talk? People know how to react. What was the experience in China, and what do you recommend for us in our region?
Yeah. Okay. In China, that most of the pig farms already built their own lab for the African swine fever. So they do regular check about the people, the environment, the pigs, and even the samples from the very nearby pig farms. So they can get the result very quickly. And they also supervise their own pigs very regularly. If they find some positive one, they will do some continuous supervise. They will, for example, they will check their whole herd twice within 4 to 5 days, and to find out if there is any positive ones. And if they found them, they will pick it up and kill them. Yes, that is what we did in China now. Yeah.
And the tests you do in China in the farms are PCR?
Yes, mainly PCR, because PCR, if you use the oral or nasal samples, fluid samples, you can find it quickly. Yeah.
Okay, very good. Stefan, how was the process in Germany? How that happened? Can you share a little bit of the story with us and your recommendation for us in Latam?
Yes. So you were talking about what happened when the first case was identified in the country.
Yeah. From the moment it happens until the final diagnosis, how long it takes, and what is the learn about that? Because this is the critical moment, I believe, that we need to be ready.
So I can tell you exactly how long it took, but I think the first, when they found the carcass, the suspicious carcass, taking a sample, bringing to the lab, and we have one of the most profiled research institutes for ASF in Germany. The first diagnosis, I think, was within 24 hours, and then it was reconfirmed, it kicked off all the mechanism. And I think what is essential and what we saw, and if you remember this time-lapse video that I showed you of Europe with all the cases, and you saw the difference between countries like Russia, like the Ukraine, like Belarus, where you saw some cases pop up here and there, yes, and mainly the red cases, mainly the farms that got infected. Mm-hmm. And once the disease moved into the European Union in the Baltics, you saw these huge clusters of blue cases, which are wild boar. And then, of course, also some infected farms. And and it's not like we suddenly have wild boar in the European Union. It's just that we do, or the European Union is doing a better job in diagnosing and surveillance of and monitoring of the disease and monitoring of dead animals. And this is essential because this gives you an idea what is going on. And when you have a case, you will see this cluster. And it is important then for commercial farms in that region, and I would say at least a 25-kilometer radius, to really be vigilant on their biosecurity, to make a really good separation from wild boars and their pig, to keep them indoors if possible, and to really be vigilant for any dead wild boar that you find, and test every animal that you can get your hands on. That's important to know what's going on. And you have this case in the Dominican Republic. You found one pig. Mm-hmm. I would not like to give you high hopes on that pig being the only one. There are for sure others that move, etc. So it started and it's there.
Okay, thank you, Stefan. Dr. Abelops, a question for you. So, what is the Guatemala status today for a diagnosis for African swine fever? If there is a veterinarian from Guatemala today and they are suspecting a case in their herd, how they should proceed and where they should submit the materials for diagnosis for suspicious cases of African swine fever?
The diagnosis of African swine flu, well, these laboratories already, official laboratories, have the means to carry out these tests and to issue a diagnosis. So we do have that in place. Okay, thank you.
A question for Gaudi. What kind of disinfectant do you have experience is working better to control, to improve biosecurity, and to protect the farms acting African swine fever?
Okay, I think first of all, you must find out what is the risk point of your farm. In China, the most important risk point is vehicles, is big transport trucks. Yeah, because people still sell the infected pigs to the slaughterhouse. So the slaughterhouse, they have a lot of virus. So the pig trucks is very important. So we invest a lot of money in the disinfectant and wash facilities for that. And yes, that's what we did in China. And another thing is that you must check the people and the animals. The animals, I mean, we've also find some mouse, rats, they carry the African swine fever because in China, many pig farms, they built very nearby. So if one farm was affected by African swine fever, for example, if if all the pigs there were killed and the farmers give up, so the mouse from this farm will move to another farm that will carry the virus to this farm. So it is also very dangerous. So it depends on the situation in your country. In China, I think most important is the slaughterhouse. It's vehicles. You must disinfect that. Yes.
The slaughterhouse is a critical point in China experience.
Yeah. Yes.
All right. And a question for you, Gaudi, on that regard. Those multi-system, many floors, and I assume the biosecurity for those buildings, for those farms, should be very high level because the stakes are big. On your experience, they were able, those systems, to be free of African swine fever, or they also had issues with African swine fever?
Yeah, actually, they also have some issues. Yeah, because if you build a multi-floor system, that means you must use a very small land to rear more pigs. That will increase the density of your pigs. And so if the African swine fever coming to that kind of site, it is very difficult to eradicate this virus. Then the traditional pig farm that is in my experience. But for another hand, if the company use this kind of system, they may how to say that, they may more careful about biosecurity. So that is another side of that. So I think it is at the same risk of the traditional farms. Yeah.
Okay, good. Thank you. I have a question to Dr. Abi. You mentioned use of technology for control of the biosecurity. Do you have any example for us how you're using the technology, IT, for control of African swine fever, Dr. Abi, or what is your vision for that?
It is guided to security control, not only for ASF, but other diseases, to automate security and to have external security to prevent that these viruses go around our farms. So we take into account all these interactions that we have daily. We have a new app, and this app is to control the the movement of peoples with technologies, and not to run the risk of having someone who is knowing, or to have an exception. I don't know if I understood the question, but basically we're having people and movement control to strengthen this. No, that's exactly what I asked you.
Stefan, talking about Germany, what I saw you presenting and what I got from your presentation is that until 1994, Germany was importing a lot of pork, and then
until
slowly
2004.
Yeah, and then become an exporter, a heavy export for pork. And African swine fever was a big hit for the industry, as I can understand from you say that the industry will change. And then what you said is that in the future, Germany will focus more in the domestic market. My understanding is that the pain right now for the German industry is so big that people prefer to be more careful to not be too dependent of exportation. Is in those lines your comment?
Yes, and there are two different trends in the industry, and the industry tries to cope with the situation. So of course, the big meat producing companies that we have or that are operating in Germany and from Germany, they are trying to find ways to keep up their export business. Okay, they try to negotiate with all the uptaking markets like China, for example, and we've heard that China still has the demand for the meat. And they try to keep these export channels open. And if you look at the swine industry itself, the pig producers, they are asking really for an increase in the domestic production. So we have a kind of a marketing activity at the moment from the farmers that that people should demand piglets that they call the 5D, so 5 times Germany, born, raised, etc., slaughtered in Germany. And looking at the overall situation and other factors that play in, my assumption is that we will need to we need to strengthen the domestic demand to keep the swine industry alive.
Okay. I have one more question here. Thank you, Stefan, for your answer. One more question I have here is for the three of you is about what is the risk of water as a source of African swine fever?
Okay.
Drinking water?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it is. I would have to look it up in detail, but from what I know is that pigs can infect it through contaminated water, but you need a higher infectious dose when you want to infect a pig with water. I mean, you will not want to, but yeah, there's a risk. Let's put it that way. I don't know, Digao, if you have more insights or
Yeah.
Abby.
Yeah, for some articles have been already published, we find that it confirmed that African swine fever can spread with water. And I can tell you another phenomenon we found in China, that in the south part of China, in summertime, it's all many places it's always flooded. So we found that after the rain season, after the flooded, a lot of farms get African swine fever. Yes, we found that it may be the virus may be come with the water to go into the farms. Yes.
Okay. No, thank you, Gaudi.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah.
Listen to you guys. Here's my rationale, and help me here. The risk, as Stefan said, is the pigs, the boars in Europe, which I think in some countries in Latin America can be an issue. Not right now at first, but maybe in Dominican Republic it is one thing to be observed. But right now the risk we have in other countries for Latin America is the big jump, the vector jump, probably human. And once that happens, we need to pay attention for slaughterhouse, because that can be a point that we can disseminate a lot of faster disease that we cannot see. This is one point to be attentive. Number two, as I listened to Dr. Abby's educating people and strengthen the biosecurity protocols, and then be careful with the water source about the choice of a disinfectant. But my question is, feed from people, the works that goes to the farm. Maybe this is also a big risk for African swine fever. In I don't know, in Germany or China or what we are planning in the region, Dr. Abbott, people can bring food to the farm, or people are more incentivized to the farm provide food for people to avoid the risk? How you guys are seeing this concept? I would start with Gaudi, then go to Stefan, then with Dr. Abby.
Okay, I think it depends on the situation of your country. As I mentioned that in China, our slaughterhouse have already been contaminated. So it is for the farm managers, you will not let the people to bring some pork or something else to their pig farm. And for another thing is, unlike the pig farms in the US or Europe, Chinese pig farmers always live inside the pig farm. They can go back to their home just one time, 1 month or 2 months. So the farm will provide the meat, the vegetables, and some other things for their workers. So it is easy in China to control this kind of thing. Yes, you can get the pork from your own pigs. You can plant vegetables inside your farm. Yes, that's what we did in China now. Yeah.
Thank you, Gaudi. Stefan?
Yeah. If we look at Europe, we for sure have a very diverse set of farms. In Germany, for example, the majority will be smaller family-driven businesses, family-driven farms where they live near their operation, near their stable, and most of them will not consume any food inside the barn. On the other hand, also looking into Eastern Europe with bigger operations, bigger farms that have employees, they often provide food on their own for the employees, so that the people do not need to bring anything in. And if they bring something, it should not be pork. So it can be poultry, it can be beef, whatever, but there should be no pork coming inside the farm, definitely.
Very good, Stefan. Dr. Abi?
Question is that in their experience, that the slaughterhouse are a critical point in China. Also, the water source is a problem, and the biosecurity controls, training people are very important, but they concern with food that comes into the farm, and the producers in China and Germany provide the food for workers, so to eliminate contaminated, some cold cuts or salami or contaminated pork meat. Yes, this is one of the greatest risks in Guatemala. We have seized food for travelers that bring pig meat, and we have seized, now with the problems of the Dominican Republic, we have seized food. I think this is regrettable, because we should promote pig meat, but not in the farms. That also the food of the workers in the farm could be maybe a sausage or a cold cut. Unfortunately, with this risk, and being that's a possible route for infection, we have to work a lot in controlling and mainly educating people, and to make people aware, to see that they understand that we are promoting the use and consumption of pig meat, but outside the farm, and this is a non-negotiable truth. Thank you, Dr. Abi. Stefan, Dijau, and Abi.
Stefan, Gaudi, and Abi, we had a very good discussion here. It's about the time to close. Before close, I would like to give you the opportunity for each one of you. Would you like to do a question to another speaker by chance before we close here?
Not from me, thank you. But I would like to thank them for the interesting content and presentation, especially the insights into China. And what I got from Abby's presentation also was very interesting. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
No, thank you. I have no question. Thank you very much for inviting me, and it's been a great pleasure to share with you this forum.
Okay, so Gaudi and Stefan von Berg and Dr. Abi Lopes, thank you very much for being here to share your thoughts with us. We really appreciate that. Thank you very much. So
Thank
now
you.
I would like to take the opportunity to remind everyone that on November 17th, we're going to have our third edition, where we're going to talk about innovation and new technologies to help us to control the African swine fever, to prevent it in our region, and also to have Dr. Dennis DiPietri talk about the economic impact that African swine fever can have in our region now that we have the first case in the Dominican Republic. So I think that's going to be a great meeting. Fernando Chocid, our director for Key Account Management, will be moderating that meeting. I invite all of you to be there with us. Thank you very much to share this afternoon, morning or night with us here on this discussion. And again, I would like to thank you very much for the speakers, and I wish for you all a great evening. Thank you.
Thank you.
Buenas tardes.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Stefan.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Abby, Dr. Miguel.
Yeah. Bye-bye.